What's up, guys? Adam Patterson out here, of course, for the Adam Patterson channel here. Um, and I wanted to talk to you about kind of like the behind the scenes of entrepreneurship here, because it's relatively boring, you know? The people who put, highlight reels of entrepreneurship out there, they probably didn't record that all in one day, or they're probably at like the next level that everybody dreams of and talks about. But the early stages of entrepreneurship, it's pretty boring, and that's pretty much all there is to it. It's relatively boring, and you kind of do the same things each and every single day. At least I do. For the most part, there's a few things that I have to do every single day. I get on, I talk to my customers, I check on drivers, make sure that they're picking up and or delivering at the correct times, and then I have to make cold outreach to new prospects. And then from there, I need to pretty much gather a new list of leads to send in so that I can get my return back to me. But for the most part, it's all the same stuff day in, day out. I do the same thing pretty much every single day. So it's not the prettiest thing in the world. I'm not at the point right now. I'm seven figures, but we're not at the point right now where I can go off and I can buy a private jet and fly everywhere. I'm not spending 10 grand a day to go out and fly to conferences. They're just not things that are plausible for the size that we're at right now. I could drive places. I could probably stay in hotels at places. But in terms of if I were to book private jets or something like this for myself, we would lose all the money that we make, and we would lose it so fast. So this isn't the level that you need to be at. That's an entirely different level. You need to be taking home probably somewhere in the 10 million mark, I would say, to make it worth, buying private jets or doing any of these things. Not that I haven't thought about it just like once in a while, that might be fun for like a vacation. If Maddie and I go on a vacation or something, private jet us out to an island somewhere or something like this. But in terms of on a day-to-day, it's not, I'm not flying everywhere. I'm not sitting through meetings all the time. I'm not going to meet with my banker every single day. I'm not talking to my accountant every single day. I'm not talking to my attorney every single day. It's just, for the most part, things that I am doing each and every single day are just making sure that the business stays running and stays healthy. There's no reason. There would be no reason to do all those things today, and try and make it seem like I'm different, like levels ahead of where I'm at, because it just wouldn't make any sense. So that's thing number one. That wouldn't make any sense to do. But the behind the scenes it's incredibly boring. When you first start up your own company, it's exciting when you're actually like opening your doors and when you're like making your first few cold calls to see if it's going to get off the ground. But once you have like that proof of concept and then things start to like slow down, it just becomes, you're doing the same thing day in and day out until you get like, over time, your daily activities start to compound so much that then you can hire on help and do all these things. So yeah, like the behind the scenes of the day to day, it's incredibly boring. Anyone who is starting their own company and you think that they have a life that you really want to live, like I could go do this from a coffee shop, I could go do this from pretty much anywhere, but in terms of like the actual day-to-day things to keep this business alive and running and like a well-oiled machine, everything's the same. Every single day I've got to check on my freight, I've got to make sure that my customers stay happy. So, you gotta speak to your customers, you gotta check on your freight, at least for me, because I'm in the logistics business. Call your drivers, make sure they're picking up on time, make sure they're delivering, update your customers. That's all you need to do that. So you got to speak to your customers, and then you need to do cold outreach, and then you need to find more people to do cold outreach on. Like, it's not complicated. It's not sexy. At least this business isn't. I'm sure that if I was, you know, like trading stocks or something like that as a, you know, solopreneur trader or something, that might seem a little bit sexier because, you know, you can make $1 million in a day doing it. But you can also, like, you only really need to make $300 a day to make 6 figures in a year. And, you know, I make well over that. So it's just not that bad. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to talk about, the behind the scenes and everything of a day-to-day of being a solopreneur or just like a smaller business. I'm sure when you get larger, it'll be more fun and there'll be more things you can do and see. If I had like a big, you know, facility where I had multiple people working underneath me already, it would probably be a lot more fun. I'd be out on the sales floor shooting the shit with people. But in terms of the actual day-to-day of what it looks like when you're just, you know, behind the scenes of a 7-figure business, this is what it looks like. It's just one guy sitting in a room, you know, handling things from a computer. And, you know, I could probably do this all the way up to like 10 million because before I left my previous job, my book was 10 million and I could run it all by myself. So this is just what it could look like for a while. So, you know, 8 figures, maybe we'll start to see some additional help coming in. I might do it a little bit earlier just to leverage different people so I can have more than just myself selling, just so I can scale a little bit faster. But there's really no need nor reason for it. So this is just kind of what it looks like behind the scenes. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe as always. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this is your business experience, if you are also an up-and-coming entrepreneur, someone with like a 6-7 figure business, maybe even 8. Tell me what that's like. But if you're someone who's on the rise next and you think that you're just going to, you know, hit 7 figures and then all of a sudden your life is going to change, you know, spectacularly, unless you know, you made smaller 5-figure numbers prior to stepping out on your own, your life's not going to be any different other than where, like, location you work at, and who you work around. Because I worked at larger companies, I've worked at billion-dollar companies. The last company that I worked for was doing $1 billion a year. I've worked for a $4 billion a year company. I've worked for an $8 billion a year company, and then I worked for like a $20 million company. And, you know, they all look different. And then I've been, you know, my own startup here. So they all look different. The experience is probably different for everyone. Yeah. But if you're going to do something, I would highly recommend going into it. I like being alone personally because I like to have total control over everything. If I had a partner and my partner didn't work as hard as me, I would be incredibly pissed off about that. So I wanted to maintain 100% control and ownership. But, you know, I think my next business venture, I would probably start it with a partner. And I'd be willing to take less of the pie if I didn't have to do as much of the work in the startup. I would probably put in more money or like leverage some connections or leverage something else that I have, in order to take less and do less of the actual like physical labor work in terms of like making sales calls, all of this. But if I were to not, and I were to split something 50-50, I would absolutely make sure that my co-partner do an equal amount of work that I'm doing, or else we're going to have to resplit the pie. But that's just me. That's just my thoughts. I should have dominating control if I've dominated the work and dominated the results. So that's my thought. But up to you. But again, it's pretty boring back here. But I hope you enjoy.